dedication, drive, honesty, transparency, work rate, productivity. And that's why we work in Vietnam and we don't work in India. And that's why we're successful. As you can see, I'm completely open about my passion for Vietnam. India is one of my big competitors, and Vietnam is great. But you might be surprised at how Vietnam touches the lives of the average English person, or actually British person, I should say, another passion of mine. Because English schools use software technology for the curriculum planning, lesson planning, e-learning systems that is developed by Vietnamese engineers. So every day, every English pupil touches Vietnam. Fantastic, isn't it? And when we have something wrong with us, I've got a gammy leg at the moment as a result of too much cycling uphill. I go to the doctors, and the technology that the doctors' GP surgery is using here in the UK is written by Vietnamese software engineers. So everybody in the UK touches Vietnam on a regular basis. It's fantastic, isn't it? What I'm trying to illustrate here is that actually I believe the future for Vietnam is to make sure they make that change from being an assembler, a manufacturer, a do it for other people, a create things for other people to make money from, to being a country that can innovate and actually change the lives of everybody else in the world. And that's where I believe the real future of Vietnam lies. And right now you're number 8 in the software industry. You might be an interesting fact, but you're ranked 8th according to Forrester and IDC. But we touch the lives of everybody in the world as well. Because how many people in this room have got a smartphone? Pretty well everyone. So you're all using 3G. Did you know that every single person with a smartphone, and actually everybody using current 3G technology for normal mobile phones, every time they press that send button or that receive button, the technology that takes that call and passes it from base station to base station around the world is written by Vietnamese engineers in Ho Chi Minh City. Starting with the 3G technology that is driving the mobile comms in the world is developed by engineers in Ho Chi Minh City that work in our course in our labs, our 3G labs. And we're already developing 4G and LTE technologies, the future, for Alcatel-Lucent and Siemens Nokia and Huawei in China, for them to drive the next generation of mobile phones. That's innovation, and that's where I see Vietnam coming. And I'm getting over-passionate and getting carried away, so I'll try and calm down a bit. After you leave here, you might go and have a good steak. And on Valentine's Day, it's traditional for the boyfriend to take the girlfriend out. I know that doesn't happen in Vietnam. So normally the girlfriend takes the boyfriend out. It's traditional for the boyfriend here to take the girlfriend out for a nice romantic meal. And I tell the boyfriends here that when they're tucking into that big juicy steak, they have to remember that the technology that makes that juicy steak really good is the DNA testing on bull sperm that is run by software written by Vietnamese engineers. So now every time you eat a steak, ladies and gentlemen, you can think of Vietnam rather than bull sperm. But that's the sort of innovation that I'm looking at. So, and why do I think that there is a future? Well, the first thing is that 83% of your graduates study a science subject. That's changing a little bit at the moment, but I hope it continues. So you're a science-based education. And it's your education system that's currently delivering large numbers of technology literate graduates into the market that will be your win in innovation, I believe, in the future, to change you from being a doer to an innovator. And I think that that's important. So 50,000 new IT graduates. This year, the government plans to deliver 210 to 250,000 graduates per annum by 2020. So 1 million people will be in the IT innovation sector in Vietnam in not too many years away. And that, I think, is very significant for changing both the internal IT systems, which are so key to Vietnamese and foreign investors operating in the country to make money, and changing the world, which I think Vietnam is more than capable of doing. If you look at your exports, $1.2 billion of software exports, that is pretty big. And it actually represents a fair chunk of Vietnam's GDP. This just gives you a few stats that are current stats on how things are looking in 2011. But it's growing so rapidly that it's actually beginning to create some interesting dynamics in the world. And if you look at the number of people that are coming out into the software industry and are being educated in both the hardware sectors and the software sectors, these are the drivers. And someone said to me this afternoon at another conference I was at, we think the future in Vietnam is actually the digital economy. And I think so too. And technology is the driver of the digital economy. So I think that this market, the ICT market, is very important to Vietnam's future. I'm not an academic, as you probably guessed. I'm a businessman. So I've tried to put up on here some IDC, independent research. And by 2020, IDC think you're going to be within the top 10 best software and technology outsourcing countries in the world. That will change the face of Vietnam. 8 to 10% of your GDP is going to come from your technology industry. That will change the face of Vietnam, because that's tremendous growth, and that's innovation, not static assembly. You'll have 1 million engineers. Your internet penetration is going to be 70% of the population. Now think about that, because at the moment you're 34.2% of the population. The dynamics for e-commerce, for e-government, for international trading using the internet are going to be absolutely huge. So that dramatic change of building of infrastructure to give the population internet access is going to change the dynamic, and that is getting close to UK, German and US levels. So you're already top 20. You're going to have world-class engineering skills inside Vietnam. They're already developing, and that's both in technology, in software and in manufacturing. So you're going to change your economy if the government gets it right, if education gets it right. There's some real outstanding opportunities. And the biggest move forward that the Vietnamese government has made is to put a big tick in the box on allowing and promoting cloud computing. Because that will allow all your SMEs, all your small businesses, all your urban businesses to suddenly go online with very little cost. Because suddenly you're in the cloud without having to have lots of technology to support your business. That's a major step forward, and I think one of the best decisions in technology that the government has made. 2.7 million smartphones. You're actually going to be launching 4G next year. Fantastic. That's going to start to push the revolution. You've already got 1.2 mobile phones per capita. I've got absolutely no doubt you'll be 3 per capita, and one of those will be a smartphone. That is going to change, once again, the way you do business. That's going to change you to an innovator, not what you currently are, what the country currently is, and that is doing things for other people, and therefore taking a very small slice of the pie. And I talked about e-commerce and e-security. That last one should not be underestimated, because e-security is the big challenge for all nations, and the ability to be able to grow your secure access, your secure internet, your secure e-commerce is actually will underpin the ability to grow your technology sector. And I'm going to end on this little gem, because I just love this one. And I'm British. No, the French are my competitors, so are the Germans, and so are the Americans, the Australians, the Japanese. I want us, as a British country, to win. So I really like this one, because there's 300 million Americans are going to learn their future from technology developed in Vietnam. Because every single screen across the US seaboard that is delivering the Obama-Romney election will be driven by information that is streamed onto those big screens, streamed onto those television screens by technology developed by Vietnam engineers. And I'll just end there.
Ladies and gentlemen, where's Mr. Huang? There is Tim Huang away. I'm not a technology man, so I don't necessarily do this. Ambassador, ladies and gentlemen, good to see you all here. My name's Rob Lally. I work for UK Trade and Investment. UK Trade and Investment is the British government organisation, half owned by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, half owned by the Ministry of Trade. We have two very simple jobs. One is to help British business succeed overseas. The other is to bring in foreign investment into the UK. We believe that the UK is one of the most open for business countries in the world. And if it hasn't been said to you before, and I don't know if you're here for your first year or you've been here longer, but you're all very, very welcome in the UK. I hope you get maximum value out of your time here. Like Paul, who it's very hard to follow a Paul Smith presentation on Vietnam. Passionate about Vietnam, passionate about the UK, and there is so much more we can do together. And I think this is one of the building blocks for the future. My job is to be responsible for our operations, UK Trade Investments operations in Asia. And for me, Asia is Pakistan East. So that's 3 billion people, nearly. Why my interest in Vietnam? I was lucky enough to live in Vietnam working in the British Embassy between the years 2000 and 2004. And so like Paul, quite often when I'm talking about Vietnam, there's something here in the heart. It's not just a job. I had 4 fantastic years. My family grew up in Vietnam, and it's always a great pleasure to talk about Vietnam to British people. This is pretty unusual because normally Paul and I stand in the room, and if we talk about Vietnam, we normally know more about Vietnam than the audience. I think on this occasion, probably not going to be the case. So I spent 4 great years in Vietnam. I was really pleased to be heavily involved in what I think was a landmark visit of your Prime Minister to the UK in 2008. And this year I was looking after the Vietnam Olympic team here in London, working with them in the Olympic Village. I'm sure many of you know that Vietnam didn't win any medals. and actually, it wasn't my fault. I did everything I could. And if I competed, you would have. But there's a really serious point about it, which maybe we'll come to at the end, is I'd be really interested in your views as to why you think a country like Vietnam, 90 million fit people, by and large a pretty good diet, why is it a country of... Why... This is the latest I've ever done an event in Vietnam about a beer, so it's a special thing. Why did a country like Vietnam not win any medals? And I think it's hard to follow Paul because he's very buoyant and quite rightly very positive about Vietnam. I come in a slightly different way, hugely passionate about Vietnam, but what I wanted to talk about is let's make Vietnam a real opportunity, not the challenge that sometimes British business sees Vietnam as. So This is UK trade and investment. Key is we've got 162 offices around the world. We cover close to 100% of global GDP. We have an office in Hanoi and an office in Ho Chi Minh City as well. We are committed to putting more than 50% of our global resources into emerging markets by the year 2020. Emerging markets pretty much means Asia. You know, that's where the action is. That's where it's so exciting. You know, last week I was in India, so as I cover the whole of Asia, I have to be nice to India, as I do to Vietnam. I can't be as biased as Paul. These are all facts and figures that you know, and I'm not going to bombard you with trade statistics. We all know the path is going one way, and that's up, and up very positively, but from an incredibly low base. You know, I don't want to upset the ambassador. But, you know, the growth of Vietnam of 5–6% is still from quite a low base. So, growth of 5–6% for Vietnam as opposed to Singapore 2–3%, you know, Vietnam should be up there with China. You know, it shouldn't be saying, look, we're just a bit behind Indonesia and China's up there. Vietnam should be pushing it harder with China. And as Paul says, you know, what you've got the people. You've got dynamic people, and that's why people like me always come back and always carry on wanting to work with Vietnam. And these are the keys as we see them. You know, the WTO accession in 2005 was hugely important for UK and UK business. As much for what it says about the direction in which Vietnam wants to go. In the following Doi Moi and following the introduction of market reforms, where we saw smaller rep offices opening up in Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City, 2005 and the WTO accession was, you know, the most ultimate statement that Vietnam could make, that we want to be a player in the global economy, we want to compete, and we believe we can compete. And just as an aside, one of the great things about being here today is that I hope in future every one of you will be one of my customers. Because either you will be working with UK business, helping them succeed overseas, which would be fantastic. Or if you go back to Vietnam or work for another international company and you want to invest in the UK, either way, we will welcome you with open arms and want to work with you. But the WTO accession was hugely important. The issue about how Vietnam has implemented the WTO terms in which it joined is perhaps another issue, and one perhaps we can discuss later, because this is what I think is the only brake on Vietnam's development. And it actually is part of my answer to the question why Vietnam didn't win any medals at the Olympics. The choice is entirely up to Vietnam about how rapidly it reforms, how quickly and how open it makes its markets and its economy for investment. You know, what I found quite interesting about the Tony Blair letter was that that letter could have been written 10 years ago. You know, the words in that letter were exactly the sort of words we were using and still are using in Vietnam. The gift is within Vietnam's hands about how far, how fast, and how it wants to reform. And as the UK, we're not going to lecture you on do it this way or do it that way. You know, as you probably know, the UK has made many mistakes ourselves in relation to how we run our economy, not just right now, but even in the past with some of the privatisations. So, you know, we're not going to stand here and say, look, you must do it this way. But what we are going to say is, look, we will work with you hand in hand in order to help you achieve your policy goals, and believe that, you know, we have the people, we have the passion, and the knowledge and the experience to do that. So the gift is always there. But ultimately, it is for Vietnam itself to choose and to drive its own destiny. And you guys are the right people to start saying, let's accelerate. You know, the foundation is there in Vietnam. You've heard from Paul. You know, if you doubted it, I mean, you guys should be some of the most confident people anyway. But if you doubted it for a second, you've heard it from a businessman who's employing, I think it was about 10,000, and he said 4,800 that you employ.
It sounds like 10,000.
It feels like 10,000.
Yes. When you visit.
Yeah.
When you visit.
But, you know, he's employing 5,000 people in high quality jobs. You know, this is what you want. You want hundreds of advocates like Paul. You don't want government people like me who never employ anybody, just take money from people. You know, you want advocates like that. And again, it's in Vietnam's gift. The The UK and the Vietnamese government signed a strategic partnership just the other year. And again, what we do in government is we set the framework and hope that the framework we set is there and is conducive for business then to operate freely and to succeed. And what it signifies is that the partnership between the UK and Vietnam is from the very top. And hopefully beneath that, that is how business can develop. It goes without saying, what we want is increased trade. I'm often asked by British businesses, where are the real business opportunities in Asia? My own view is that if you're a good British company, you can succeed anywhere in Asia as long as you commit time and effort to the market. If you just go once and then go back a year later, you're not going to succeed anywhere, but you're not going to succeed in the UK if you operate like that. So increased trade is what we want, and certainly I always say, there's three sectors where I just know that there's always fantastic opportunities for the UK anywhere in Asia. One is healthcare, one is education, and the other is in luxury goods and brands. We know that all Asian economies are fantastic markets for British luxury lands, and we hope that will continue. And as Vietnam's economy grows, then we'd like to see more Jaguars on the streets and various other things. And in time, we will see more Vietnamese investment in the UK. At the moment, we don't have a great deal. But if you just look at Japan after 1945, then followed by Korea, then Taiwan, now where China is, Vietnam is following the same path. So Vietnamese businesses will be here in big numbers in years to come, and we will welcome them, and we hope some of you will be working for them and bringing them here, because part of what you're doing, I hope, is that you will become, just as Paul is, I think we should pay him, by the way. Paul is a fantastic ambassador here in the UK for Vietnam. We want you to do the same thing, and that's why it's so important that you had such a fantastic experience in the UK. But Vietnamese investment will come to the UK, I have no doubt about it. We will make sure that the right business environment is here for you to succeed, or Vietnamese businesses to succeed, and open up the market. A couple of areas where we believe there's current fertile ground for development. Vietnam, again, like many other Asian countries, needs a huge amount of money spent on its infrastructure. I actually quite like going to Vietnam. The traffic jams in Vietnam are nowhere near as bad as India, Bangkok, Manila, Jakarta. And same with airport capacity and various other things. But there's no doubt about it. To grow, the infrastructure needs to develop, as it does in the UK as well. And the UK is already working with Vietnam in a number of projects, especially to do with how they're financed, and build, operate, transfer, and things like that. And the sectors where we think there's real opportunities for British companies to partner with the Vietnamese, financial services, I think Prudential is still pretty strong in Vietnam and well known, in HSBC, Standard Chartered Bank. Energy, I don't know how many of you still use sort of Castrol oil in the motorbikes, as well as Shell and BP, so that's very strong. And Premier Oil, I think, is now the biggest British investor by financial size in Vietnam. I mentioned infrastructure. Retail, it's not a joke, it's a massive business. It's a bit like tourism. It's hugely important. Retail sales, we know, are up 20–25% year on year in Vietnam, as Vietnam's economy booms and Vietnamese people are buying more and more high-quality products, which is fantastic for the UK. And education, I don't need to say it to you guys, hopefully, that the UK gives a high-quality education offer. What we say to business is, this is the way forward. It's about potential, it's about perseverance, but it's also about patience. I made the point that you don't just go into Vietnam and expect it all to open up for you. You've got to work and work hard, but my belief is that there is real appetite amongst the Vietnamese to partner with British business, especially with tech-rich British businesses. You saw from some of the ambassador slides that Vietnam productivity in some other areas is not perhaps as high as you like. And again, I think there's real opportunities there. I'd like to end in a really upbeat way, but before I do that, I think one of the things we just need to keep doing and working in any way we can is removing all the sort of little niggles, because one of the issues that we have in the UK is reputations of countries. So, you know, I find it very, very hard when talking to business to explain to them the opportunities in India, not just because of people like Paul Smith, but I have problems because people see India as just too big, too complex. Similarly, in Indonesia, where we believe there's huge opportunities, you know, British business feel, oh, it's just too corrupt. How can you do business there? And I think there's never a real truth, because I think business can always find a way to move forward. But what we all need to work together is to make sure that the perceptions of doing business in Vietnam are that, yes, it's going to take hard work, but yes, it's possible. And that's what I wanted to call my talk. Let's keep it, Vietnam, a really good opportunity, not a challenge. I think things are all going the right way. Whether they're going quickly enough, whether you can influence them more, I don't know. But ultimately, it is in your gift. You know, you are the future of Vietnam. The foundation is laid. Start building. Thank you very much.